This is the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose, where I strategize with business owners on how to grow and scale their businesses to hit their income goals. This is episode 230 of the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose. Today, I am speaking with Julie Ciardi, and we're talking about how to stand out on social media. This is going to be one of those interviews where you would sit there and go, yep, I've heard that before. Yep, heard that before. But this is the perfect perspective. It's going to really dive into how you can be unique, how you can make sure that your people are hearing from you and getting the information that they need to be getting from you. Now, before we dive in, I want to make sure that if you haven't already grabbed my Instagram engagement guide, that you do that, because in this episode, you're going to hear us talking about that ideal person and making sure you're creating content for them. You're going to want that guide in order to help you do this. So you can send me a DM at Jenny_Melrose and just tell me that you want the Instagram engagement guide, and I will send it right over to you. Otherwise, you can hop over in the show notes and grab it as well. Hi, Julie. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh my gosh, Jenny, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this.
I am excited to dive into this conversation. Before we do, though, will you introduce yourself and your business?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say that, I have been an entrepreneur for about 4 years, but prior to that, I was in corporate. I was a vice president of marketing at a Fortune 500 for 18 years before I made the leap. So I don't know if some of your listeners are still in that, like trying to leave that corporate job with their side gig or not. But it was the best thing that I ever did. It definitely took a little bit of time to really lean in and know where I wanted my entrepreneurial journey to go. But what I am doing now and have been doing over the last 3 years is I am now a business coach who really helps people that are just starting out. So it's really, I'm often working with women that are currently in their corporate jobs. They're teachers, they're nurses. They have jobs that they would love to be able to either have the flexibility and freedom to leave. And they also have a burning desire to create something of their own, and they often are stuck in not knowing how. So that is what I get to do now every single day, which is pretty awesome, is I get to work with the most incredible women, helping them to achieve their dreams and get cut through some of the complexity and be able to do it with simplicity and enjoyment. And it's a blast. So one of the best things I've been able to do. And I have a podcast. It's called Ignite Hustle Podcast, which is, again, to help women that are really they're in that hustle part, because it's kind of like that word. I don't know about you, Jenny, but I hear that with that word. It's like hustle, but honestly, it does take some work, especially in the beginning. I think it's the hardest part is that beginning, or when you're starting something new. So it's a blast. That's definitely a place to check out as well.
No, that is perfect. So I am listening to your intro and I got stuck on the very first part when you said 18 years in marketing, because I'm thinking in my head, did she start when she was 14? Like, I know so they can't see you, but
girl, I'm 46. I'm 46, turning 47 this year. So
yeah, I would have had you at like 32.
Oh, I love you. You're like my new best friend.
I love it. Sorry.
I think it's happiness. Happiness. I think I look younger right now than I did back when I was in corporate, to be honest with you.
I agree too. When I was a teacher, same exact thing. I feel the same way. It truly is. So since 2020, there are more and more content creators that have come to social media. We can often feel like it's saturated. Which social media platform should we focus on to get the most engagement for our time? Because I think that's a big question that a lot of my listeners have is there's so many platforms. Where do I go?
I get asked this question all the time. And we can dilute ourselves, especially if we're a solopreneur. We can really dilute ourselves if we are trying to be everywhere. I think that over time, you should try to expand on multiple platforms, but go all in on one to start. And I like to really differentiate to say, go all in on one that's really your lead generator. It's not your total platform. You could potentially have a Facebook group or something else that you're bringing people into. But what is that primary platform that you are expanding your network, growing your leads, growing your email list, all of those things, right? Because if we're not doing that, our business can never grow. So pick that one primary platform that you're going to use for that purpose. But it has to be where your person is, right? So I'll have clients that are really targeting women in corporate. Well, that's harder to find on Instagram than it is on LinkedIn, right? Versus someone that's really trying to help people in fitness and fitness coaches and wellness coaches. I mean, you can easily find them on Instagram, right? So to me, it's not about which platform is better right now. It is two big things. Where is your person hanging out? Where is your audience hanging out, first and foremost? Second, what do you also enjoy? Because the kind of content that you create is very different on the different platforms. And you're going to stick with something. It's kind of like exercise. You stick with things that you actually enjoy and don't hate, And so it's kind of the same thing. You want to find that balance of where is your person or audience, where are you most, do you enjoy hanging out yourself, because you're going to show up more there.
I'm so glad you added that last caveat of what do you enjoy? Because it is, you'll end up feeling like I can't consistently put content out here if I don't like creating videos for TikTok. It's going to be impossible to do that. So I think that was so smart. And of course, the piece about being able to find your leads. And I think that comes down to knowing where your audience is, right? Yeah. So good. I love it.
Yeah.
So,
and I would say the other piece of that too, Jenny, is that to your point about how it's saturated and all of that. It is, but at the same time, I think one of the problems that people still kind of have this expectation that, well, I'm going to show up on that platform and I'm going to post and I'm going to have a whole bunch of hashtags and people are going to find me. And that's not as easy anymore, right? So that's gone away on a lot of platforms, that organic kind of growth and all of that. But you got to also leverage whatever platform you choose to be very proactive on it. Don't leave it to an algorithm chance of whether or not you get seen or heard. Be proactively time blocking to engage proactively yourself with people, to be finding your person, inviting them into something, following them, and they're following you back, right? If you're not ready for paid ads, you got to go in and do some of that organic work and engagement versus just the posting.
So going back to that piece about being saturated, I think the number one thing I hear is everyone's doing what I'm doing. How can I possibly stand out?
Oh, this is my favorite topic. And it's the name of my book, right? Because here's the thing, but no one's you. It doesn't matter what you're doing. No one is you. And everything that's out there, whether it's a fitness coach, wellness a wellness blogger, or whatever it may be, an influencer of a mom influencer, that's okay. No one's you. And so the things that I think is so important, and we often forget this because it's funny, we're the thing that makes it unique, but then we go into our own head and we forget to really, that as we're putting ourselves out there, we're trying to connect with our ideal person, right? So I like to think of these 3 foundational components to how to stand out in that crowded marketplace, in that crowded, whatever platform it is. I mean, I think only maybe Clubhouse right now is not saturated, but there's no content. You're just, it's a totally different ballgame, right? So most platforms are a bit saturated. That's okay because no one is you. So what do you need to do to stand out? It's 3 foundational pieces. It's you, it's who you're trying to reach, who you're talking to, who you're trying to help, who you're trying to reach, and it's what are you offering? What are you offering? Those 3 pieces, when you put them together, it's kind of like a snowflake. You're not going to find that same look and feel anywhere else because no one is you. Okay. And I think where people get hung up is that they forget that themselves, their personal brand, who they are, their stories are super important. And again, no one else has them. Right. So that's one way you start to stand out. The second way, and I might talk about this in a little bit different way than maybe people have heard before, the whole idea of your ideal client, your ideal avatar, like, I don't really care what her age is or that she lives in the suburbs with 3 kids. And like, that's okay. It's good to know some of that stuff. But I mean, like, who are you really trying to talk to? What are her thoughts and feelings? What are her desires? Where is she currently at in life? What does she wish she had? Right? Anyone you're trying to reach, they're somewhere where they want to go here, right? Their current state of their health, their wealth, their family, their finances, their business, whatever it is, right? They're in a certain spot and they want to go over here, right, to their desired place. You got to be talking to that person and understand them because that's going to make you stand out. I always say, when you're doing it right, when someone responds and says, I feel like you were in my head, that is exactly what I've been thinking, right? That's when you know. And I have to tell you, Jenny, that when I first started, I was talking to too many people. Like I wasn't being focused enough. And I wasn't growing as much. I will tell you that the moment on my preferred platform, for me, it's Instagram, but on my preferred platform, the moment I zeroed out everyone else and I just talked to my girl, everything changed. Engagement went up. The DMs started going like, oh my God, you're talking to me. Yes, I got to come into your group because, you know what I'm feeling. You know what I'm saying. So knowing that and then knowing what you're offering, what are you offering, right? What are you offering? Is it, you got to get clear on that. Like what, and for bloggers and influencers, it could be, certain lifestyle. It could be that you're offering education, whatever it may be, but make sure that you're really clear because you want to be able to make sure that you're offering something to your ideal person that she can take action with you. Right? Because often, and you're the expert on this more so than me, but obviously when we're a blogger or influencer, we want to attract certain brands, of course, but at the end of the day, we need that audience. And the audience isn't the brands. The audience is our ideal person that connects with us. And that means we're not going to connect with everybody. And that's okay. That is okay. And that's how you start to stand out, in the crowded space is those 3 foundational things. And there's more to that, but that's the foundation. And you really can't build kind of the rest of the formula from there until you really understand those 3 things pretty deeply.
Yes, I think it's that feeling of knowing that you're going to cast a net and you just want to cast a net on those that are your perfect ideal people. And in order to do that, you have to know the problem that you're solving for them. I think that's the piece that often gets missed is that we'll put out content as content creators and not understand what problem we're solving because we're solving 18 different problems and not honing in on the person and their problems that they have. So I love that point. So we actually recently had Brittany Crossan, who I know she was on the podcast back in episode 228, and she actually found significant success from using Instagram Reels because she tapped into her personal background as a performer. Like that conversation to me was mind blowing. And all the pieces, when she told me she had a background in performing, everything kind of fit together. I was like, oh my God, this makes so much more sense now. I get it. So how do we determine what it is about us that is unique and will make us stand out? Because I think that's what a lot of us struggle with. I always hear, I'm not unique. I'm just another mom.
Well, so I love working with women on this because everyone has a story. And I think we're overthinking it when we think about what makes us unique, right? It's like, wait, I think people automatically go to what is some like crazy, amazing skill that I have that no one else has. And that's not it. What makes you unique is your series of stories and experiences that have taken you to where you are today. And one of the best things you can do is you can start to just do a little bit of a brain dump a little exercise you can do is literally, I heard this one time on a podcast, and I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense. This came very intuitively to me, but for others that are like, I'm not really sure what is unique to me, I don't know. Go back and think about when you were like the 10 years you were a teenager, the 10 years you were like 20 to 30s. If you're in your 30s, kind of what your 30s been like. What are some of the stories that really stand out to you? What could you share about those stories that have either made you who you are, that you can glean maybe something that you can teach your audience, that they can get inspiration from, education from, sometimes just to get to know you better. Because the funny thing is, right, is that it's not that it's just something so unique you could put your finger on it. It's also who you are, because we have this magnetic effect with people. We're going to attract some people and kind of propel other people away, and that is okay. The heart of how you do that is showing up and being uniquely you, because you're sharing even things that might seem kind of like insignificant. You're sharing, right? You're sharing, and people are getting to know who you are and that personal side of you. So those stories you're going to refine and hone in on, that's what makes you unique. That map of stories and experiences and transformations and anything that's happened for you, major decisions, that becomes the unique snowflake that no one else has. Couple that with your personality.
Sue, it's funny that you say that, because we were I host a clubhouse room every Tuesday, and there was a girl that came up asking questions about her brand and how can she possibly dive into this. And her whole thing was she was a genealogist, and it's been done, and there's all this content out there, and where do I stand? And Phil Palin, who was co-hosting with me, asked her the question, why do you do what you do? And she put out in just conversation the most eloquent reason I have ever heard. It was brilliant. And we just kind of sat there, all of us quiet for a second. We're like, this is why we wish things could get recorded in Clubhouse.
I know,
because
right?
We need you to say that again, because it needs to be everywhere about your content, because it was such a good reason as to why she does what she does. Yeah. So I love that. What would you say is the biggest mistake you've seen when people are trying to stand out?
Being totally lukewarm. Lukewarm content does nothing. You gotta make it hot. And the way that you make it hot is building on exactly what we've just talked about here, which is you have to know who you're talking to, what your story is, and what problem you're solving. Those are the foundations. Now, from there, so that your content isn't lukewarm, your entire content strategy for the platform of choice you want to do, let's say it's Instagram, has to build off of those three foundations, those three foundational elements. You and your stories, your ideal person, and the problem that you're solving, because you can't start posting, making reels, IG stories, doing all the things, even your bio, like if you don't know those three things really well. And that you start to actually just talk in your content to your person about who you are, what you offer, how you know what they're going through, all of those things, that makes you hot. That makes you stand out versus being really, really generic and lukewarm. Because what I always hear from people is, but my product or my service, it's for anybody. It's like for men and women, all ages. It doesn't matter. And I'm like, yes, of course it is. But who are you specifically going to stand out? And I always tell people, in the physical world, outside of social media, you absolutely will sell, engage, like whatever, with other people that might not be your exact fit. That's okay. The point is, though, in that saturated online market, in the saturated social media space, you have to stand out. And the way to do that is to not be lukewarm. It's okay. You're not, yes, you're right. You're not going to hit everybody, but you significantly reduce your chances of even converting anybody if you're not really talking to them. So it's those three foundational pieces, and then building your content strategy around that so you're not lukewarm.
I love that you defined lukewarm, because in the beginning I was like, what does she mean by that? And when you said generic, that totally made it all fall into
think
place.
of like lukewarm food or lukewarm like soup or anything. You're like, ugh, like this isn't supposed, like, it's just, ugh, it's like, ugh. And we don't want our content. Like we want it to really resonate. We want it to hit people. I always say, like, when you look at your story and your ideal customer and what you're trying to offer to them, do you get goosebumps at all? Because if you don't get goosebumps, you're probably not there yet. Like you should get a physical, emotional reaction. That is not lukewarm, right? That's you're on to something when you start to get passionate about it and you feel it, emotionally.
Yes, I think the book, I always talk about this book. I absolutely love it. And it's not even what he's like most well known for. The Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz, who also did Profit First.
Yeah.
But his book, The Pumpkin Plan, really, truly made me understand what I was trying to get when I was talking to that person and like how to replicate and recreate it so that I had these people that were these giant pumpkins that were my ideal people. And I knew how to talk to them and found that when I knew how to talk to that one, it was so much easier to talk to the others because they had the same pain points. They had the same things that they would message me back and say, like you said, you took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly how I'm feeling. How did you know that?
Yes.
Well,
yes, it's the magic sauce. It really is. It really, really is. And I think, part of that is also then making sure that when we say talking to your person, it means that your captions, it means that when you're in your stories, whether that could be LinkedIn, every place has stories now, right? That you're actually talking to her as if you were looking at her. So when you're putting that post up, that you're actually talking to her, like, have you ever? Imagine if you, like, those are the first few things you're saying. It's about them. It is so not about you, right? Like people make the mistake of, I invite anyone to go back and kind of look at their last 6 posts on any platform. And in those first couple of lines, are you using I and me, or is it you? And you'll be like, whoa, because that matters, because people, as they're scrolling, as they're listening, you're talking to me, like you, right? Like listening, if people like listen, if it's about you, they typically aren't. So if you make it about them, you then can bring in, well, that was me too. And this is what happened to me. But you gotta, like, when we say talk to your person, really in your captions, in your stories, in your emails, like it is about them. And that's what they care about, right? So that's what you want to really be focusing on.
Yes. No, I love it. So you have a book, we kind of briefly jumped over it, I feel like, called the Standout Breakout Formula. Can you tell me a bit about the formula? Does it include the 3 steps we've kind of talked a little bit about?
It does, because they're foundational, right? So I wrote this book because in my entrepreneurial journey, I built a couple of different kinds of businesses. I actually built a brick and mortar boutique. That was my very first business. I built it while I was in corporate. So it was kind of like this kind of crazy side hustle because I was actually building a physical brick and mortar boutique. But I always say we, it was me at the time. I scaled that brick and mortar boutique to 6 figures in revenue, to over 100K in revenue in 4 months, because I used online marketing strategies for the brick and mortar. I was doing curbside delivery 4 years ago. So before COVID, because I knew my person. She was a busy mom who was in the car, who had kids in car seats. And just like the Starbucks, she wanted to be able to get her clothes. So we had everything online. They could buy, we'd package it up, and like myself or my people that worked with me, they would bring it out to their car. Like we were doing that back then, right? But I used online marketing strategies for my brick and mortar, right? So there was that. Got that to 6 figures. I ended up selling the boutique. And then when I built a very successful network marketing business, and then I built, a 6-figure plus coaching business. I used the same formula for all 3 very different businesses. It was no different. Okay. And so that's why I was like, you know what? People keep asking me, I keep talking about the same thing. I'm going to write a book about what did I do? How did this work? And it came down to those 3 foundational pieces of, you and your story, your ideal customer and your offer. You start there. You've got to start there, right? Like I didn't build a boutique that was for like it wouldn't be someone that was going to come in and expect it to be kind of like, hoity-toity and like, no kids running around. I mean, we had like a kids area. They could come watch TV. Like it was for the busy mom and anything went. We had like a prize box, okay, like at the dentist office for the little kids. Like if mommy got to try some things on, we've got some toys for you. So I knew my person. So I was always talking to her. I was buying the clothes for her, right? So you've got to have those three pieces, no matter what your business is, and really do the work on that. So in the book, the cool thing with the book is that there's a downloadable workbook, because I'm a big fan of it's great to learn. We should all be learning and all that, but we can't stay in learning. We got to implement and take action. So there's like a workbook that goes with it so that you can actually work on, okay, so who am I? What is my story? Who's my client? All of that. Then you build your content strategy, your content and messaging strategy from there, right? You got to have a messaging blueprint of like, so what am I saying about me, about my offer, about my client? Like what am I doing there? So we talk about how to create a messaging blueprint that really becomes your content strategy. We then develop your content calendar, all in there. So you're repeating over and over and over again the same messages, right? The best marketing in the world is repetition, is when you're using repetition. I think I know I said lukewarm being a big mistake. Another big mistake I see is that someone will say something once and they'll never say it again. They'll share something once and they'll never share it again. Meanwhile, a tiny percentage of your people saw it. You're always bringing new people into your network. Repeat. So when you kind of set up this structure, so then you're like, okay, we're just putting this content on repeat continuously to find my person and engage with her, right? And then the other big component to it is that we take proactive action to connect with our ideal person. We don't just hope and wait that on social media, online, the online tactics, we're going to put these messages out there. We're going to put the content out there. We're going to hope and pray someone sees it or likes it. We are proactively, if we're not paying for ads, right? If we're not doing the paid approach, and a lot of my clients aren't. So my book doesn't go into, using any kind of paid traffic and paid ads. It's really about organic. And so how do you organically connect with people? You've got to not depend on just hashtags. Like you've got to go and do the work and roll up your sleeves. I almost joke that before we had social media, a lot of people would have to go door to door. They would have to rent out, ballrooms and have events and things like that. We are so blessed that we have the ability to use social media, but you still got to do that connection and prospecting and lead gen. Not everyone loves to do it, but it's really important. So we kind of go through an approach to doing that that's authentic and that really helps you to proactively engage and connect with your ideal person as well. Yeah. And then we go into like how to actually convert them into sales with like a small, simple funnel to do that. So it's just really simple, but it's the foundation to be able to really be able to stand out and actually build your business online.
Yeah. And I think it's a step that a lot of bloggers and influencers honestly skip, because they'll start the blog and start just putting content out there and just checking to see what's going to stick to the wall like spaghetti. They don't actually have that person in mind and these kind of things that you're talking about. So I think that this is just so helpful, exactly what they needed. Is there a spot to go get the workbook? Because I am a former teacher and love the fact that they get to do the assignments to go along with the book. Where can they actually go for that so we can link to it in the show notes?
Yeah, so the book is on Amazon. And then when they get the book, the link, everything's right in the book to go get the workbook to go with it. So it accompanies it. Yeah. Yep. It's right on Amazon, the Stand Up Breakout Formula. Yeah. It's really, a lot of my clients end up going back to it. They print out the workbook again there. Cause I feel like, I don't know about you, Jenny, but I feel like when it comes to our story, our ideal customer and our offer, we're never done. We're always refining and fine tuning it. We're like, but this message really worked. And I kind of attracted more of this person. I think I really want to make sure I'm honing in and attracting more of this person than that person. And it's a constant evolution. And so it can be really helpful, to kind of like refresh ourselves too, which is nice.
Yes. And I think that also goes hand in hand when a platform decides to give us a new way to put out content. we have to really figure out how to redefine and meet them using that new platform. Thank you very much, Instagram, because we continue to just imitate everyone else and make it part of their platform. So yes, no, I love that. Where are, Julie, the best places to connect with you?
I mean, really, I love Instagram. That is where I love to hang out and connect with people there in the DMs, and the podcast, Ignite Hustle podcast. You know, I really go into these kinds of things deeper, and happy to connect with people there. Obviously, you have your podcast there. That these are podcast listeners. So it's just a fun way to kind of further the relationship. So you can go and check out the podcast as well.
Perfect. We are going to make sure to link to those in the show notes. I often ask my guests that come on if they have a freebie or any way that they can kind of connect with you and kind of continue this kind of deep dive into understanding how to stand out. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, the best way. So I outside of, the podcast, the other way to connect with me is I do have a free Facebook group. I teach every single Tuesday inside the Facebook group on all of these topics, right? And so we go deeper. So every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, it's called the Ignite Hustle Squad. They can totally join that group. It's julieciardi.com/group. And they'll go right to the Facebook group. And it's just I love it because I love to teach. I love to share. I offer up so much free value and free information. We'll even run some free masterclasses in there where we go deeper on the standout breakout formula. So that's just a great way. And we keep all of the trainings in there so people can go and check them out.
Excellent. We're going to make sure that we link to those in the show notes as well. And for those that are listening, you can obviously hit up Julia and I on Instagram and just ask directly for that DM. Make it easy. We don't want to make this any harder than it needs to be.
Exactly.
So just hop over to Instagram and send us a DM that you'd like to be part of the group, and we will make sure to send you that link so that you can join. Julie, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and my audience. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Jenny. It was awesome.
All right, you guys, there you have it. Julie and I obviously had a great conversation. Not only was Julie on my podcast, but I am also over on hers. So make sure that you check out her podcast. I know that you're obviously listeners. So hopping over to a new podcast to find out even more great content just makes sense. As always, I appreciate it so much when you guys leave a rating or review on iTunes. It makes it that much easier for me to book great guests like Julie. So if you haven't already, you would leave me a rating and review, I would so appreciate it. As I said in the beginning, if you'd like to get my Instagram engagement guide, just send me a DM on Instagram at Jenny_Melrose and let me know that you want the Instagram engagement guide, and I will send it right over to you. All right, you guys, until next time, I will see you all then.